All women are different, but they are all women. This video is androcentric from a men's point of view and is presented as opinion, commentary, and debate. Expressing opinions is not violence. These are ideas to challenge, question, and argue in public, because classical liberalism relies on the First Amendment for its dialectic. If you are a feminist, then consider this. If patriarchy truly existed as claimed, feminism could not. And if all men are trash and women are equal to men, then what are we to conclude? Women will die for their children. Men will die for their wives and children. And God chose to die for all mankind. Authority rolls up with responsibility. If this framing of facts offends you, click off to a cute cat video. Proceeding further will expose you to gamma bias and criticism directed at ideas, claims, institutions, not at any individual's virtue or dignity. Our method follows the 7 liberal arts, the trivium, grammar, logic, rhetoric, and the quadrivium, arithmetic, geometry, music, and astronomy. And the transcendentals, the good, true, and beautiful. If this framework is not for you, feel free to exit now. It's no disgrace. Women are wonderful. God bless America. Men are great. Feminismus delendus est. Rise of the anti-Marxist male. Empowering Men in the Age of Cultural Revolution, written by Conrad Riker. Available now, links in description. Rise of the Anti-Marxist Male, a field guide for men who still notice reality, the soy, the spider, and the state. Surviving the gynocentric tax trap, defeating the evolutionary shit test, and reclaiming the unapologetic logos of Western civilization. Let us begin with a simple, brutal syllogism that the academic parasites and their state-sponsored puppets refuse to utter. Major premise: a just civilization allocates resources and respect according to objective competence, production, and natural law. Minor premise: our modern gynocentric Babylon allocates resources based on manufactured victimhood, emotional hysteria, and a zealous systemic hatred of the masculine logos. Conclusion: we do not live in a just civilization. We inhabit a parasitic theater of the absurd where the architects of reality are systematically looted to subsidize the biologically and intellectually inferior. I see you, brother. I see you grinding out a 12-hour shift, paying a tax rate that would make a medieval serf blush, only to turn on your screen and be lectured by some purple-haired, septum-pierced harpy about how your mere existence is an oppressive apocalypse. They constantly wail about marginalization, a term stemming from the Latin margo, meaning the edge or border, yet they hold the megaphone, the academy, and the courts. Who is truly pushed to the precipice? Men account for 93% of workplace fatalities, nearly 80% of suicides, and are, by irrefutable treasury data, the only demographic that constitutes a net positive in lifetime tax contribution. You are not the oppressor, you are the host, and the cultural Marxist leeches are draining your lifeblood to fund their own decadent extinction. But this grand larceny of your labor does not end at the tax collector's desk. It slithers right into your living room, disguised as a twisted romantic comedy. Let us deploy the trivium, grammar, logic, and rhetoric to dissect the evolutionary theater of the modern female. Consider the classic domestic comfort test. She spots a spider the size of a lentil and suddenly acts as if the skies are falling, launching into a choreographed pantomime of terror. Why? Because evolutionary biology is ruthlessly unyielding. She is not genuinely terrified of an arthropod. She is biologically hardwired to stress test your telos. She wants to know, will you abandon reason and fold into her emotional frame, validating her irrationality like some soy-enriched pacifist? Or will you step into your natural archetype, dispatch the threat with silent, stoic competence, and anchor her chaotic emotionalism to the bedrock of reality? When you apologize for the weather, or tolerate her intentional misquotation of facts to test your boundaries, you fail the test. You signal cowardice, the absolute worst of all masculine vices from which every other societal rot flows. We are expected to rule a world that tells us masculine stoicism is toxic, while celebrating the very emotional incontinence that gets families annihilated and civilizations conquered. It is a reductio ad absurdum of epic proportions. The Marxist Hydra uses Trojan horses like conversational equity and mansplaining as linguistic shields to blind your logic and silence your undeniable competence. They demand you sit quietly while they rewrite the dictionary, dismantle the biological bedrock of sex, and cheerfully abort the future of the West. Enough. It is time to relentlessly weaponize the truth and smash this modern Babylon. We are going to tear down the pseudo-academic phantom of Western exploitation and replace it with the undeniable, glorious fact of Western ascension. We are going to rebuild the apprenticeship mastery ladder, take back our rightful headship as providers and protectors, and obliterate their pathological lies with the light of the good, the true, and the beautiful. If you are sick of being the silent beast of burden for a system that openly despises you, prepare to have your mind permanently unplugged from the gynocentric matrix. We are not victims, we are the vanguard of the restoration, and we are taking the frame back, the tyranny of the marginalized and the erasure of male labor. In 2015, 2 Princeton economists released a mathematical obituary for the American working man, charting a demographic suicide so grim it should have stopped the nation in its tracks. They documented that the mortality rate for non-college educated white men was skyrocketing due to what they termed deaths of despair: suicide, acute alcohol poisoning, and drug overdoses. Here is the macabre, hilarious hypocrisy of the gynocentric state. While millions of men were literally dying in the Rust Belt from the existential agony of being stripped of their civilizational purpose, our tax-funded universities were busy weeping over microaggressions and setting up safe spaces for privileged purple-haired academic grifters. The silence surrounding the white death of working-class men is deafening, a perfect contrast to the endless state-sponsored tear-fests for professional victims. They die in the dark. She gets a government grant to complain about the patriarchy. To understand this systemic extermination, we must first fix our grammar and ruthlessly reclaim the language from the cultural Marxist lexicon. Let us define our terms using the rigorous discipline of etymology. The word marginalization comes from the Latin margo, meaning an edge, border, or boundary. The left insists that the marginalized are those lacking institutional power. We must apply a Thomistic distinguo here. We must separate the accidental economic displacement of individuals from the essential systemic extermination of the masculine telos. It is an accidental inconvenience when a feminist feels unsafe because a man explained a concept to her at a board meeting. It is an essential civilizational catastrophe when the natural purpose of a man, his drive to provide, protect, and produce NL3, is surgically removed from the culture. The truly marginalized in modern society are not the screaming, perpetually offended activists occupying the centers of our universities and media. The truly marginalized are the silent men whose calloused hands and taxed labor prop up the entire Babylonian structure. This systemic erasure is not a tragic accident of modern economics. Male unemployment and disenfranchisement are engineered features of the matriarchal matrix. Masculine energy builds. It is inherently tied to an objective, unforgiving reality, logos. Feminine energy, untethered from male restraint, consumes and feels. It is inherently subjective, pathos. By shifting our civilizational engine from a production-based economy, forging steel, building bridges, mastering the physical world, to a service and feelings economy based on HR bureaucracy, therapy speak, and administrative bloat, the state intentionally disenfranchised men. When you strip a man of his provider drive, Pi 5, you do not just take his wallet, you take his divine spark. Plunged into an artificial state of uselessness, men are pushed into acedia, the capital sin of spiritual sloth and despair. The left calls this progress. Natural law calls it the murder of the soul. Consider how the academic despots dress up this demographic slaughter in the garb of post-colonialism. We must apply the blade of logic to this Marxist phantom. The post-colonial theorist posits that Western expansion was purely an evil exploitation of noble, peaceful primitives. We distinguish this materialist myth from the truth, Western civilizational ascension. The West did not extract wealth from a chaotic void. It imposed order, infrastructure, and the transcendent good upon the void. Western man brought medicine, due process, the mixed constitution, and the very concept of objective rights to societies still organized around brutal tribalism. To frame the imposition of the logos as an inherent evil is a logical fallacy of the highest order. The Western man did not steal the world's wealth. He invented the systems that allowed the world to eat. To hate Western civilization is to literally hate the architecture of reality itself. Watch how their own ideological pillars instantly collapse under the weight of formal logic. Let us dissect the core contradiction of critical race theory and post-colonialism using a categorical syllogism. Major premise: a just society distributes resources according to competence and contribution, natural hierarchy, NL4. Minor premise: CRT demands resource distribution based on victim status identity, actively penalizing competence and merit. Conclusion: CRT inherently engineers civilizational collapse by inverting the natural hierarchy, AW2. The syllogism is valid, the premises are empirically true, therefore the conclusion is irrefutable. They are not attempting to build a better system. They are attempting a satanic inversion of reality, where the incompetent are elevated and the capable are crucified. Aristotle warned that the worst form of injustice is treating unequals equally. We are living through his nightmare, but how do they fund this inverted nightmare? They trap you in the gynocentric tax trap. I challenge you to look at the empirical, undeniable data on lifetime net taxation. Men from the dawn of the industrial age to this very second are the sole net lifetime taxpayers. Women, as a demographic cohort, consume vastly more in state resources than they ever contribute. The state has effectively weaponized the IRS to act as a surrogate husband. It extracts the productive energy, NL6, of the working man to subsidize the consequences of unchecked female hypergamy, the destruction of the family, and the pathological lifestyles of the marginalized. Look at the family courts, where men are stripped of their children and their assets in a 90% alimony extraction rate to fund female autonomy. This is not justice. This is a systemic violation of the cardinal virtue of justice, V2, which dictates that distribution must be proportional to merit. You are being taxed to fund your own demographic replacement and cultural erasure. I will leave you with a question that acts as a nuclear weapon against the left's entire philosophical framework, a rhetorical truth bomb that melts their pathetic emotion-based arguments to slag. If Western civilization is a patriarchal oppression machine designed to exploit and destroy, why does the entire Third World risk agonizing death to sneak into its boiler room? They flee the very communal, non-Western paradises the left praises, risking everything to live under the masculine logos, the rule of law, and the infrastructure of the white men the universities tell them to hate. They know the truth in their bones: the West is the best. The solution is not to beg the feminized macro-state for a seat at the table of our own execution. The solution is subsidiarity, NL7. We must aggressively abandon this irreparably corrupt system and build localized masculine microeconomies. We must form civil society associations, revive the apprenticeship mastery ladder, SO5, and withdraw our consent and our labor from a system that profits from our silence. We are the architects of reality. We must stop building Babylon and start rebuilding Rome. To decode this ritual, we must first fix our grammar, for the cultural Marxists have so thoroughly polluted our language that most men can no longer distinguish genuine peril from theatrical performance. What is happening when she shrieks at the spider is not terror, it is mimicry, nature's oldest and most effective form of biological deception. And until you name it correctly, you will remain hopelessly unable to respond to it. The evolutionary theater, weaponized incompetence, and the comfort shit test. Consider the spider. Specifically, consider the tragedy of the modern indoctrinated male when confronted by a woman shrieking over one of these eight-legged creatures. We are told ad nauseum by the high priests of the gender studies department that biology is a social construct and that men and women are blank slates perfectly symmetrical in their desires and capabilities. Yet, when a 5mm arachnid descends from the ceiling, the entire facade of egalitarianism instantly collapses. The modern woman, despite her degrees in intersectional victimology, reverts instantly to a state of biological neoteny, the retention of juvenile traits to evoke a protective response. She screams, not because she is in mortal danger, but because her evolutionary firmware demands she initiate a shit test. She is unconsciously casting a theatrical production, and she needs to know if you are the leading man or merely a frightened extra. This is the crucible of biological realism. Sex is binary. Feelings do not dictate ontology. And female-induced helplessness is an ancient evolutionary survival strategy, not a quirky sociological byproduct of an oppressive patriarchy. To dissect this madness, we must first anchor ourselves in the trivium, beginning with the rigorous grammar of the situation. We must sharply distinguish between terror and mimicry. Terror, from the Latin terrere, to frighten, is an objective existential threat, a home invasion, a fire, a genuine crisis of being. Mimicry, derived from the Greek mimikos, imitative, is a biological deception mechanism where a harmless species mimics a dangerous one, or in this case, a perfectly safe environment is feigned to be dangerous. When a woman launches a comfort shit test, she is deploying pathos mimicry. She weaponizes emotional pathos to test if you will abandon the logos, the rational, ordering principle of the universe, and fold into her chaotic emotional frame. If you accept her premise that a household pest is in existential crisis, you have failed the dialectic. You have surrendered truth for comforting lies. Why does she do this? The ontology of the shit test is not a sociological glitch. It is a cold, calculated evolutionary biology mechanism. Women are the evolutionary gatekeepers of life, burdened by a biological reality that renders them physically vulnerable. Thus, their subconscious operates on a relentless, unspoken syllogism to ensure their mate can embody the logos and provide protection. Major premise: female hypergamy requires constant, subconscious verification of a male's emotional stability and competence under pressure. Minor premise: the modern, sterilized world presents zero genuine physical threats to verify this competence. Conclusion: therefore, the female must manufacture artificial crises, drama, irrational panic, comfort tests, to stress test the male's capacity to embody the transcendentals and hold the frame. She is not acting irrationally. She is acting with the ruthless, calculating precision of a field marshal evaluating a soldier's readiness for war. Let us apply a reductio ad absurdum to the leftist feminist critique of male stoicism. Feminist dogma explicitly frames male stoicism as toxic masculinity, asserting that emotional repression is harmful and that men must become more emotionally expressive and vulnerable. Hypothesis: if male stoicism is toxic to civilizational safety, then the total abandonment of emotional regulation must result in safety and prosperity. Empirical observation: we look at the data. Over 70% of non-reciprocal domestic violence is initiated by women. The family court system is a gynocentric meat grinder, disproportionately punishing men based on female feelings rather than objective facts. The abortion rate sits at a staggering holocaust of millions, driven by the sociopathic prioritization of female comfort over natural law and the unborn's right to due process. Female emotionalism, untethered from male reason, breeds chaos, not safety. Therefore, feminist ideology refutes itself. Female emotionalism requires the heavy anchor of masculine temperance, V4, to prevent the ship of family and state from capsizing. Men, we are biologically and spiritually hardwired for the doctrine of the imperfect ordeal, SP3. Your masculine soul is built to face objective reality. The initiation of boy into man through the crucible of actual danger, responsibility, and sacrifice. A woman's manufactured crisis is a distorted, inverted cry to witness this male initiation. She throws a theatrical grenade into the living room to see if you will jump on it or throw it back. When a woman loses her absolute mind over a spider, a broken nail, or a misunderstood text message, she is acting out a perverse desire to see you conquer chaos. If you match her emotional hysteria, you commit the cardinal vice of effeminacy, VC2, choosing the comfort of appeasing her emotions over the duty of objective truth. You become her sounding board, not her shield. Consider the logical trap of the comfort test, perfectly structured as a hypothetical syllogism. If you validate her irrational fear by panicking alongside her, then you demonstrate you are easily manipulated by emotion, proving you are weak, effeminacy. Conversely, if you dismiss her cruelly and degrade her, then you fail to demonstrate the masculine virtue of protection, NL3, proving you are a deserter. Therefore, what is the rational Aristotelian mean? The rational male must employ amuse mastery. You must dominate the physical reality by dispatching the threat while utterly dismissing the emotional theater. You do not argue with a screaming banshee. You slay the dragon, hand her the severed head, and quietly return to your newspaper. You assert the logos without begging for her approval. Observe the tragedy of the feminized male in the wild. A spider descends, the woman screams, the soy boy panics, his chest tightens, his breath shortens, and he matches her chaotic frequency. Oh my God, babe, where is it? Should I call someone? Do you want me to get a cup? He validates her irrationality, offering weakness instead of competence. He acts as a sounding board for her hysteria. The result? Her biological attraction to him withers on the vine. He is no longer a protector. He is a dependent, a second child requiring management. Now contrast this with the red-pilled man. He hears the scream, observes the microscopic threat, and feels nothing at all. He maintains his gravitas, V9, the weighty, grounded presence of a man who has faced real ordeals. He doesn't argue. He doesn't panic. He simply walks over, folds a newspaper with stoic precision, and squashes the bug with silent industrial competence, V8. No applause is expected. The threat is neutralized, and her manufactured panic is exposed as the ridiculous theater it always was. Her attraction spikes because she is biologically forced to align with his unshakable frame. This is the practice of the unshakable frame. You must cultivate a physical and psychological presence that preemptively neutralizes these evolutionary theater performances before the curtain even rises. You do not defeat the cultural Marxist revolution by debating hypocrites who believe your very existence is a hate crime. You defeat them by embodying the truth so thoroughly that their lies shatter against your chest. Refuse the maternal state. Reject the gynocentric framing that demands you apologize for your competence. Stand erect in the natural hierarchy of being. You are the imago Dei, the masculine bridge between matter and spirit, called to forge order out of chaos. Master your emotions, conquer your shadow, and when the women around you inevitably launch their theatrical tests of your resolve, do not flinch. Simply crush the spider, hold the line, and let the silent virtue of your actions speak louder than the deafening, pathetic screams of a decaying, feminized world. This defense of objective truth must extend beyond grand philosophies and into the microscopic daily interactions where the cultural Marxist rot truly festers. I watch it happen constantly. The gynocentric sphere has weaponized the basic act of communication, twisting grammar and rhetoric to serve a ruthless shit test of male submission. They have rebranded a man's unwillingness to parrot feminine solipsism as a lack of emotional intelligence, shaming him into silencing his own logos to appease the fragile feminine ego. You must understand the mechanics of this linguistic trap before you even attempt to speak, the epistemological cudgel, misquotation, interruption, and the framing of disrespect. When a woman demands to know if you can hold a conversation, she is not inquiring about your capacity for dialectic. She is probing the structural integrity of your boundaries. The modern gynocentric sphere has twisted the definition of communication into a demands for endless simpering agreement. I want you to understand the mechanics of this trap. A conversation to a feminist is not an exchange of logic. It is a monologue of her emotions, and your role is to nod, validate, and applaud. If you dare to introduce empirical reality, if you dare to interrupt her solipsistic monologue with the sharp blade of truth, you are framed as disrespectful. This is the great feminine projection. She does not want you to listen. She wants you to obey. She is shit-testing your submission to her frame, probing to see if you will sacrifice your intellect on the altar of her comfort. A rational man respects a woman's humanity. He never respects her intentional falsehoods. To defend against this, we must identify the linguistic shield used by those whose arguments lack logical substance, the pathetic neologism mansplaining, led us to find this term with the precision of a scalpel. Grammatically, it is an ad hominem circumstantial fallacy, a verbal trick designed to discredit the speaker's identity rather than engage with the proposition he presents. When a woman deploys mansplaining, she is confessing her intellectual bankruptcy. She is admitting she cannot defeat your syllogism, so she attempts to disqualify you from speaking. It is a gamma bias assault on male competence, PY8. We must ruthlessly separate the virtue of charity, hearing the truth from any mouth, from the vice of pusillanimity, VC3, accepting lies to keep the peace. To accept the label of mansplainer and yield the floor is an act of cowardice, VC1. You are a man. You are endowed with logos. You do not need permission to speak the truth. Let us dismantle the underlying dogma of this behavior, the demand for conversational equity. Consider the formal logic. Major premise: truth is an objective transcendental SP8 that requires precise, unhindered language to convey. Minor premise: feminist conversational rules prioritize subjective emotional comfort and equity of speaking time over logical accuracy and empirical fact. Conclusion: therefore, feminist discourse is structurally hostile to the discovery of truth. It is that simple. They demand equity in speech for the exact same reason they demand equity in outcomes, because they cannot compete on merit. If an idea is stupid, it does not matter if a man or a woman says it, it must be discarded. By insisting that you stop talking because you have used your allotted time, they seek to sever the limbs of your argument before you can reach your conclusion. You must refuse this frame entirely. I recall a dinner party where I witnessed a man dismantle this exact tactic using the ancient power of the periodic sentence RS6. A feminist at the table, fortified by cheap wine and cheaper sociology, launched into a tirade about the wage gap, misquoting a debunked statistic. The man she was targeting, a stoic, red-pilled brother, did not flinch. He began to respond, laying out the variables of the wage gap: hours worked, hazard pay, career choices. She immediately tried to interrupt, employing the epistemological cudgel of mansplaining. He simply raised his voice slightly, not in anger, but in gravitas V9, and utilized a Ciceronian periodic sentence. He said, "Despite your insistence that I am silencing you, and notwithstanding the popular media narratives you have swallowed whole, the empirical data, which accounts for every variable you have intentionally ignored, proves conclusively that the wage gap is a function of individual choice, not systemic oppression." The sentence was a fortress. By the time he reached the verb at the end, she had been forced to sit in silence and ingest the entire dose of reality. He did not interrupt her. He built a logical wall she could not scale. Consider the mechanics of her preferred weapon, the interruption, derived from the Latin rompere, meaning to break. An interruption represents a willful fracturing of rational discourse. It acts as a direct assault on the logos. By interrupting you, a woman attempts to break your train of thought, shattering the crystal of your logic before it takes full shape. This serves as a solipsistic demand to prioritize her emotionalism above your reason. Following this is the misrepresentation dialectic operating as a deliberate, calculated shit test. She will intentionally falsify a fact, a movie line, or a statistic, perhaps stating a falsehood regarding male violence or historical oppression. By doing so, she probes your gravitas, essentially asking, will he correct me or will he prove to be a coward? Allowing the lie to slide indicates you value her comfort over the truth. Correcting her with exact logic, T2, however, establishes your authority. You must correct her. Actually, the study you are referencing found the exact opposite. This is the discipline of the word oath, CH9. Say what you mean what you say, do what you said. If she interrupts, you command the floor back. I'm speaking. If she misquotes, you correct the error. That is factually incorrect. You must be surgical. Harm is objective. Offense is subjective. You refuse collective guilt. You expose unfalsifiable claims. Do not apologize for your competence. Women do not want an equal conversational partner. They want a man whose intellectual frame is so unbreakable that they are forced to rise to his level of reason, or be cast aside. They want to look up. By refusing to bend the knee to their conversational equity, you are not being rude. You are saving them from the suffocation of their own emotionalism. You are forcing them to touch the firm ground of reality. That is the true masculine duty. That is the expression of the logos. I'm not asking you to be polite. I am demanding you be the vanguard. The logos you wield in the private sphere is the exact weapon we must now drive into the heart of the public rot. We have allowed a sterile, feminized culture to pathologize strength and elevate fragility, turning the biological imperative to protect and build into a hate crime. It is time to stop apologizing for the very walls that keep the darkness at bay and start reclaiming the definition of what it means to be a man. The restoration of the canonical male, mastery, logos, and the death of cultural Marxism. Virtus, from the Latin root ver, meaning man, was never a placeholder for fragile feelings or a yellow wallpaper of corporate HR degrees. It meant steadfast courage, valor, and manly excellence. Today, we are surrounded by a pathetic parody of civilization, drowning in the toxic estrogenic runoff of a cultural revolution that demands we call a swirling sewer a sacred spring. I am handing you a rhetorical flamethrower forged in the eternal fires of the trivium. Grammar to rigidly define our terms, logic to crush their false premises, and rhetoric to scorch the ideological earth of the modern Marxist hydra. You do not negotiate with a mental pathogen. You diagnose it, expose its evolutionary biological roots, and burn it out of the consciousness with the blinding light of objective reality. The left operates entirely on linguistic manipulation, hiding behind the shield of compassion while wielding the dagger of ultimate tyranny. We are going to dismantle this pathological evil rot using the most lethal weapon in the cosmos, the unadulterated, non-negotiable truth. Let us obliterate the three heads of this modern satanic hydra: feminism, critical race theory, and genocentrism. They masquerade as progressive advancements, but strip away the academic jargon, and what remains is a primal tribalistic regression into invidia, the capital sin of envy. Syllogism time. Major premise: all institutions that abandon objective merit in favor of subjective equity inherently destroy the functional competence required for civilizational survival. Minor premise: cultural Marxism, in all its critical theories, demands the forced abolition of merit to guarantee equal outcomes for unequal inputs. Conclusion: cultural Marxism is a self-refuting, civilization-terminating death cult. This is not a societal upgrade, it is an autoimmune disease. It is a tyrannical tantrum by biological losers who, incapable of building a cathedral, demand we worship the rubble. They do not want to dismantle the hierarchy. They merely wish to invert it, placing the resentful, the weak, and the deceitful at the apex, while demanding the competent men who actually build and maintain the infrastructure literally pay for their own subjugation. To reconstruct reality, we must firmly re-establish the cosmic hierarchy, dragging the vertical axis down from the Empyrean and planting it firmly back into the bedrock of natural law. The universe is not a flat, democratic plane where your subjective, microaggressed, lived experience holds equal ontological weight to mathematical reality and the living spirit of the Logos. Reality is a structured hierarchy of being, moving from matter to life to intellect to the divine, with the Logos, the rational ordering principle of the cosmos, at the absolute apex. Masculinity is the active, formal principle that orders this reality. It is the Logos embodied. The feminine is the receptive, material principle. This is not patriarchal oppression. It is basic cosmological physics, mapped out by Aristotle and Aquinas, and verified by the very telos of our biological dimorphism. Men are wired to face the chaos of the unknown, to conquer the wild, and to name the animals. We order the void. Women nurture the order we die to provide. When you invert this cosmic structure, when you pedestalize the female emotional center as the supreme guiding force of a culture, you get the logical extreme of our modern hellscape: men chemically castrated by SSRIs, apologizing for their own existence, while the state expands into a monstrous, paternalistic gynocracy to feed the insatiable, hypergamous void. Consider the absolute wreckage of the modern domestic sphere. where the father has been systematically dethroned by the gynocentric welfare state. The etymology of pater traces back to the Greek and Latin root for nourisher and protector, but the feminist regime has replaced him with a cold, bureaucratic sugar daddy. The father is the spiritual anchor of the family, the imago Dei, the very image of God, the provider, the protector, and the initiator of reality. The culture, terrified of male strength, has spent 50 years reducing him to a bumbling, incompetent sitcom punchline, or worse, an ATM with a divorce decree. Look at the cold, hard, irrefutable empirical data. In cases of contested custody, family courts, acting as enforcement arms of the feminist matriarchy, strip children from fit fathers over 80% of the time. This isn't justice, it's a gynocentric wealth transfer disguised as due process, leaving men financially ruined and children psychologically shattered, all to appease the capricious emotional state of a disgruntled mother. The restoration of the canonical male demands we violently rip the domestic headship back from the jaws of the state. The father is the priest, prophet, and king of his home. His word must be law, his authority absolute, for it is upon his Stoic shoulders that the entire weight of Western civilization rests. He is the spiritual warfare against the chaos of the world. How does a man achieve this God-tier authority? Through the supreme paradox of the masculine spirit, willing sacrifice. The left, trapped in the materialist delusion of Marxism, views power strictly through the lens of extraction and oppression. They shriek about the patriarchy as if men are just harvesting women for cheap labor. What absolute biological ignorance! True masculine power achieves its highest apotheosis not through hedonistic extraction, but through sacrifice. Look to the cross. Sacer, sacred plus facere to make. The man makes himself sacred by offering his labor, his sweat, his very life as a bulwark against the ravages of nature and time. He disciplines his appetites. He does not let his appetites discipline him. He works a job he might despise to fund a home, to raise sons to be honorable warriors and daughters, to be virtuous women. This is the ultimate refutation of feminist envy. The feminist demands the world bow to her feelings without earning a single stripe. The patriarch bleeds to build a world worthy of his family's respect. He does not demand respect based on his gender identity. He earns it through his demonstrated competence and unyielding sacrifice. To fully sever our dependence on this corrupted system, we must systematically dismantle the feminized, debt-slaving university system and replace it with localized guilds, mentorships, and the relentless apprenticeship mastery ladder. The modern university is a re-education camp for cultural Marxism, an overpriced daycare where lazy, average intelligence ideologues churn out massive debt to learn how to hate Western civilization, white men, and objective reality. They credentialize you, they do not educate you. Credere means to believe. A credential is literally just a piece of paper demanding you believe someone has competence. We reject this. True mastery, true magisterium, is demonstrated, not credentialed. The competency ladder is the ultimate meritocracy, from unconscious incompetence to conscious incompetence through the painful crucible of conscious competence until the man achieves unconscious competence. We need real men teaching young boys how to weld, how to code, how to build bridges, how to argue formal logic, and how to navigate the ruthlessness of the natural world. If your sociology degree does not teach you how to create tangible value in the physical universe, you are not educated. You are a liability. Excellence is proven in the fire of reality, not by a woke midwit stamping a paper in a sterile classroom. Let us synthesize this androcentric imperative. When you look at the collapse of male employment, the systemic legal prejudice of the courts, and the micro-relational tyranny of feminist comfort tests, you are observing one unified pathology. Western civilization is dying of acute estrogen poisoning. We have replaced the logos with the pathos. We have a society governed by the emotional caprices of hypergamous women and the weak, simpering simps who orbit them, desperately hoping to win a crumb of socially mandated female approval. The state has become the ultimate beta provider, extracting wealth from competent men at gunpoint, via taxation to subsidize the poor choices of those who refuse to self-regulate. The cure is an unapologetic, codified re-enshrinement of masculine virtue. We must weaponize the trivium against the woke board. When a feminist spouts the gender wage gap myth, you do not apologize. You demand she define her terms. You force her to admit that the disparity is a reflection of different choices, different hours worked, and different life paths, not a conspiracy of invisible patriarchal oppression. You expose the gamma bias and the Marxist presupposition that all disparity is discrimination, crushing their illogical framing with the hammer of formal logic. This leads directly to the syllogism of institutional rebirth. Major premise: all enduring institutions organically reflect the nature of those who build and maintain them. Minor premise: our current legal, academic, and cultural institutions are exclusively operated by cultural Marxists and feminized males, producing objective corruption, systemic debt, and the psychological castration of the youth. Conclusion: the restoration of civilization requires the immediate construction of parallel, logos-driven institutions built exclusively by and for men. You cannot vote your way out of a biological and spiritual war. You do not win by complaining about the rigged game to the referees who hate you. You win by flipping the board, walking out, and building your own arena. Men are the only net lifetime taxpayers in Western civilization. This is an empirical, data-driven fact. You produce the resources, therefore you hold the ultimate veto power. Stop funding your enemies. Starve the Babylonian beast. Build your own civil society associations. Establish your own masculine spaces and declare absolute intellectual independence from the feminist plantation. Picture him, the anti-Marxist male. He stands amidst the smoking ruins of modern Babylon, the embers of toxic femininity and shattered critical theories blowing past his boots like the worthless ash they are. He does not weep. He does not clench his fists in despair over the utter destruction of the false idols his forefathers warned him about. He simply stares at the vast, chaotic horizon, a faint, confident smirk crossing his face. He tightens his grip on the plumb line of natural law, grabs the trowel, and begins the glorious work of laying the granite foundation of Rome 2.0. He is the vanguard of a restoration, the master builder of a civilization reborn from the ashes of gynocentric decay. He is the living embodiment of the good, the true, and the beautiful. He is the ultimate paradox, the man who died to his own base desires so that the world might live. He is the Logos. Let the Marxists tremble, for the canonical male has risen, and hell itself hath no fury like a rational man rebuilding his kingdom. You stand now in the ruins of modern Babylon, but you are no longer a bewildered tourist. You are the architect of what comes next. Consider the cold, irrefutable data that the gynocentric thought police desperately attempts to memory hole. Men constitute nearly 80% of suicide victims, their despair weaponized into silence by a therapy industry peddling toxic masculinity as the diagnosis for a poisoning they themselves administered. Look at the meat grinder of family court, where fathers are stripped of their children and assets with the casual cruelty of a Harvey Weinstein casting couch, all to subsidize the female-centric welfare state. You are told you hold privilege while working longer hours, paying the lion's share of taxes, and comprising 92% of workplace fatalities, a gynocentric tax trap so thoroughly perfected that even the devil would blush at its efficiency. You have been gaslit into believing that your logos-driven competence is oppression, that your desire to protect is control, and that your stoic strength is violence waiting to happen. It is a satanic inversion of the natural law, so audacious it demands not just refutation, but ridicule. You are the antibody to this cultural Marxism, the living violation of their equity dogma. You possess the trivium, the grammar to define their lies, the logic to dismantle their fallacies, and the rhetoric to mock their absurdity back into the shadows. When a woman tests your frame with manufactured terror over a household spider, you do not crumble into the soggy, effeminate comfort of the soy boy, nor do you rage like a lunatic. You dispatch the threat with silent, amused mastery, proving you are the anchor of reality she desperately seeks. When the blue-haired acolytes of the woke church screech mansplaining, you recognize it for what it is, a linguistic shield wielded by those too intellectually feeble to survive dialectical combat. You stop begging for a seat at a table that serves cyanide, and instead you build your own forge. You embrace the apprenticeship mastery ladder, stepping off the conveyor belt of credentialism and into the rugged domain of demonstrated competence. Your mission, should you choose to accept the burden of your birthright, is to abandon the feminized macro-state and build the masculine microeconomy. You must become the priest-prophet-king of your domain, grounded in the virtues of the West: courage, justice, temperance, and fortitude, and forged in the fires of Stoic discipline. Do not apologize for your gaze, your logic, or your ambition. Go forth and spread this gospel of the good, the true, and the beautiful. Expose the impostors, mock the frauds, and outcompete the weak. The empire of lies is crumbling under the weight of its own estrogenic inertia. It is time for the men of the West to step out of the shadows and lay the cornerstone of Rome 2.0. You are awake, you are armed with the truth. Now, go make them tremble. And now the sponsored book introduction, Rise of the Anti-Marxist Male, Empowering Men in the Age of Cultural Revolution. You're holding a weapon. Not the kind that fires bullets, but the kind that shatters lies. My name's Conrad Riker, and I've spent decades watching men like you, fathers, brothers, sons, get sucker punched by a culture that despises your strength, mocks your sacrifices, and rigs the system to leave you bankrupt, lonely, or jailed for daring to exist. I wrote this book because I lived it. Watched buddies lose kids in custody battles to ex-wives who weaponize courts like warlords. Saw boys in my own family pumped full of puberty blockers after a therapist with blue hair and a kill all cis bumper sticker diagnosed them as trans during a Zoom call. Watched colleagues get fired for saying he instead of they, while their bosses turned HR departments into re-education camps. This isn't theory, it's war. This book is for men who are done apologizing. Men who see through the Marxist word games, the feminist shakedowns, and the soy-coded propaganda that's turned generations into docile consumers. If you're tired of being called toxic for working overtime to provide, fragile for refusing to cry on command, or oppressive for wanting a wife who respects you, you're not alone. We'll dissect the scams, how pronouns became mind control tools, why schools push Ritalin on boys but celebrate girls, and how courts treat divorce like a license to loot men's wallets. You'll get data, not dogma. FBI, stats exposing false rape accusations, studies proving testosterone isn't a social construct, and step-by-step tactics to shield your assets, your sons, and your sanity. Non-targets, exit now. If you think toxic masculinity is real, that kids can consent to chemical castration, or that men should lean in to being cucks, close this book. Go knit a gender-neutral sweater. For the rest, what's inside will piss you off. Then it'll arm you. You'll learn why marriage is a legal death trap and how to fix it. How to dodge false accusations and why rebuilding brotherhood's garages over apps, handshakes over hashtags is the only way out of this collapse. Weakness got us here. Strength gets us back, your move. Rise of the Anti-Marxist Male, Empowering Men in the Age of Cultural Revolution. Written by Conrad Riker. Buy now, links in description.